Hey, welcome back to the 30th Step. I'm Gunnery Sergeant Brian Griffith, retired. I am with Lieutenant Commander Mitch Culbert, retired Navy, retired in 1995, if I believe that's correct. So, Lieutenant Commander, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, there's not a lot to tell. I mean, I spent 23 years in the Navy active and a year delayed entry, so 24 total, when you look at it. Retired from the Navy, went into education, and taught junior ROTC for 5 years.
So, tell me about your time in the Navy. As far as what made you come into the Navy? Like, what was the catalyst? Like, what was your influences?
Well, this was 1972. I graduated from high school, and I was from a middle income family, pretty much lower middle income family. Didn't have the money and didn't get a scholarship to go to college. Had no deferment. Had a low draft number, and I had noticed that some of my previous class members or before us went over and came back in pine boxes, and I said I'm not going to go over to Vietnam
that route, sure.
and go that route. So I went downtown, right across from the Texas Book Depository, where Kennedy was assassinated. It was a recruiting station. I walked in. I said, I want to join.
Wow.
And I joined the Navy.
Wow. And so your initial time in the Navy, as far as what was your MOS? What was your rate? What did you end up doing in the beginnings of your career?
Well, it's kind of interesting. When I first went in, I had no idea what I wanted to do. A lot of people, they'll go down and they'll take the ASVAB test and sit down, and the classifier will figure out based on their mental aptitudes, what they want to do. And they gave me that test, and then they gave me the nuclear power test. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but they gave me that test, and I apparently did pretty well on it. So they said, "Do you want to be a nuke?" And I go, "What the heck is a nuke?" I didn't have a clue. And so, yeah, I said, okay. So they basically made me a fireman, going to be a machinist mate, going to go to nuclear power school and go that route. So, that's how that
So
all
your
started.
first enlistment was basically as an MM,
Machinist mate.
and what ships were you on? What duty stations were you at?
Well, let's just say that I went to boot camp in San Diego. We were an all Texas company in San Diego. We were the Dallas Cowboy Company of all things.
Right on.
We, because I made basically a unit for each one of the three recruiting commands, Orlando, Great Lakes, and San Diego. And we happened to be the one that went to San Diego. After graduation from boot camp, I went to A school in Great Lakes, Illinois, machinist mate A school. Upon graduation, because I was a nuke, I was automatically third class petty officer. So that was
wow,
rank increase right
fast
there.
track, yeah.
And then got orders to the USS Bainbridge DLGN-25 out of Long Beach, California. And that was because seats for nuclear power school weren't available at that point. They were overwhelmed with the number of.
I bet it was probably picking up.
So, yeah, that was the time it was picking up. So then went on the Bainbridge, and the next thing I know, I'm underway. We're going to Hawaii. We're going to the Pacific Missile Range. We're firing Terry missiles and, torpedoes and doing all kinds of stuff, playing war games. End up in San Diego, 32nd Street Base, pulled in. There was this idea that they wanted the fleet to see a nuclear-powered ship and how clean it was. So they didn't realize that the fossil fuel plants were going to be dirtier because all the oil and everything, but they didn't care. They were trying to show something off. And then we ended up coming up into Alameda, California, and pulled alongside the Enterprise that was moored there. The Oriskany, the Ranger. The Ranger had just got back from out there at Vietnam. Paint was chunking off the sides and everything.
I bet it was very rusty.
And the Oriskany looked clean and everything because it was Oakland's own. It never went to sea, it seemed like.
Yeah.
And then the Truxton was in there, which is another cruiser, and we were alongside it. And then, went to nuclear power school after that.
So you've been in the Navy for a couple of years at this point.
Well, actually, it's probably a year and a half, maybe. Nuke power school was another almost 8 months or whatever, year.
Yeah.
Then we, from there, you go to nuke prototype, which is, I did Idaho Falls, Idaho. That was where S1W was. That's the first nuclear Westinghouse plant for submarines, which the Nautilus, that's their plant. Then we, then that point, it would have been about maybe 2.5 years,
Yeah.
I got second graduating from prototype, so they said you can be either an engineering laboratory technician or you can be a nuke welder, and I said, I guess I'll be a nuke welder. So they sent me to Class C1 welding school out of San Diego, and I qualified as a welder, a nuke welder. They're emergency welders. And then my orders came in, and it was to the USS Tecumseh SSBN 628, which is a boomer, a James Madison class, or
Wow.
one of the six, the 40 for freedom, 41 for freedom. And it was out of Holy Land, Scotland, even though it was homeported in Charleston, South Carolina. So driving across country, get to Charleston, go to Group 6, which where all the submarines are out of there on the base. And they said, your submarine is out at sea. Your crew is on off crew. So you have 30 days R&R and all that stuff.
That sounds nice, especially probably for a night. You're 20 years old at this point.
Yeah.
Hey, cool.
Very
I'm
young,
off for 30 days. Cool.
Very young, had no idea. And then, when the end of the 30 days comes, then you do another so many days, 30 days of training and everything at the FBM training center there. And then you get ready to fly out, get your pack back,
Yeah.
and everything, your sea bag. And we flew over to Prestwick, flew into Prestwick, offloaded into a double-decker bus, and went over to the Holy Land, Scotland, where the tender was, and
Wow.
the submarines were tied up, and relieved the other crew. So it's a gold and blue crew, for those boomers like that. We relieved the other crew, and we took over, and then we start our patrol. We do
Wow.
71-day patrols like that.
Wow. So those guys then came back to Charleston?
And they come back, and they do their 30-day R&R, and their training, and by the time we finish our 71-day patrol, we're back in, and they come over and relieve us, and we fly back.
That has to be a hard schedule.
Yeah, there's a lot of time away from home, a lot of Christmases or holidays, or
Right.
even your birthday of your children you might miss, But if you know anything about the 41 for freedom, that's what won the Cold War.
Yeah. Well, and hearing dive, I'd say that has to be difficult too. Being under the surface for days on end.
Remarkably, it's an all-volunteer force, and remarkably, the people that do volunteer for it, they were kind of screened and stuff, and most of them are so busy when you get down there qualifying your first year or 2 years, and then qualifying all the different watch stations that you have to qualify on, and operating the plant and doing all the things you have to do. Time passes. Next thing you know, you're into patrol and you're going home.
Yeah. Wow.
So there's times my last patrol, I will admit, seemed like it dragged on forever because I knew it was my last one before going to shore duty. And I remember one evening after my watch, hitting my rack, waking up, cold sweat, yelling, flooding, flooding, flooding.
Yikes.
And they sounded the alarm and all that stuff, and it was not true. It was in my dream.
And you're, oh no.
So that definitely,
we probably got messed with after that.
Oh yeah. So, but as we talked earlier, March of this year was my 50th year of being qualified in submarines. So,
wow. That's amazing. That's incredible. So okay. So yeah, I had said before, you're retired lieutenant commander. Walk me through that second part of your career where you transitioned. You said you were a recruiter. So I bet that was a change of pace for you, and then walk into, how you fell into the limited duty officer.
Well, it's kind of interesting because you never know what you want to do for shore duty. I'm sure you had the same idea about rotations, about what you want to do next, and you
Oh
talk
yeah.
to your detailer, and your detailer says, here's the possible opportunities, and one of them was recruiting duty. And I said, okay, I don't know that much about it, but it sounds neat to go back into your hometown areas perhaps and
Yeah.
recruit out of there. And that's what they gave me. So I go through NRO in Orlando, graduate, end up in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, of all places. I was born in Tulsa, so I had
So
some.
you're home.
Yeah, so I knew a lot about Oklahoma City anyway, and they sent me to a 32nd Street. I think it's called 32nd, maybe. Anyway, they sent me to bag carrying recruiters, front store looking unit,
Sure.
and I recruited out of there. Um, Even though I was a nuke, they had a nuke recruiting position, but it was filled by somebody else at that point. So I had to earn my right.
Sure.
So you're talking about, I don't know if you know, but they have quotas, and they have to meet those minimum quotas, or they lose
Right.
their shore duty and they're back somewhere else. So you're always, working to get people to join. And next thing I know, I had taken the chief's exam. I was a first class at the time, and I'd taken the chief's exam. And next thing I know, they came out with the list and said, "You made chief." So then off I was going to go get, initiated as a chief and everything.
Yeah.
And that was a pretty interesting story. A lot of fun with that. Uh,
do you see? I mean, of course you probably do, but the case
Yeah.
that you had to build.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We built a trough for getting our anchors out of the trough. So they put the truth serum down in the trough, and you have to dive with your face down in there and grab them with your teeth. And
Oh
get them out
yeah.
of there. So
Then I still feel the Navy has probably some of the best traditions. Shellback. Going across the equator, that kind of
blue
stuff.
nose.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. A lot of fun times.
So at that point, they made me the nuke recruiter because the other guy was transferring out anyway, and I was a chief at the time. So I was now at the Naval Recruiting District office, recruiting out of there. And I would go around to the schools all throughout Oklahoma and next door Louisiana, Arkansas, I mean. And we would recruit out of those schools. And I started making quota and making quota and making quota after quota. And the next thing you know, I was the nuke recruiter of the year in 1981.
Oh wow.
So at that point, I had a chief warrant officer who's enlisted. He was over the enlisted recruiting. And the chief warrant officer said, "Why don't you put in for LDO? Because I am." And I go, "Oh, okay. What is that?" And so we filled out an application, submitted it. Next thing you know, the board came out. Now, he was concerned that he wouldn't make it and I would. And technically, an ensign would be over, rank wise, a chief warrant officer, but that's not true.
No.
That's like a Mustang.
No.
A Mustang is over any of the officers that are not Mustangs, and then, of course, a warrant officer is going to be definitely tough.
Yeah, warrant officer, and for those watching, so for the chief warrant officer ranks, I feel like it's kind of the same for the Navy and Marine Corps, kind of the same for the Army, where if you're a chief warrant officer, you've been in for the Marine Corps. A lot of those guys, they've been in for over 10 years, and so this wet behind the ears butter bar is, go sit down, sir.
Right.
Just go sit down.
Yeah, an ensign is never going to be higher ranked than a chief warrant officer, regardless of what they want to believe. But Mustangers hold a little bit of water. So anyway, he was worried about that and told me I had to go. There was some recruit trying to drop out. I was at that time at the Little Rock, Arkansas, because they'd moved the NRD from Oklahoma City over to Little Rock. And they put me on a plane to fly over to, prop plane to fly over to Oklahoma City because the guy was trying to drop out of the Navy, not go on his, where he was supposed to enlist.
Sure.
And so I didn't want to lose him. So they flew me over there. And during that time, the chief warrant officer knew that the board was coming out for the results. And he said, "I will leave the results in your desk drawer. When you get back, check it." So, of course, finished that, telling that guy and getting him to go, flew back in, went to my desk, pulled open the desk, and it said, "Sorry, sir, but you did not make it." And I went, "Oh, okay, well, that's fine." Um, but I get a call, and the captain's having a party over at his house, and he says, "Come on over. I'm glad you sold the guy. Thank you for that. Come on over and have a drink with us, you know." And I said, "Okay." So I went over to there, and as soon as I walked in, they all stood tall
Congratulations.
and saluted me and said, "You made
Got
it."
him.
So it was it was a 10% selection opportunity out the entire
That's
Navy,
awesome.
and I was able to make that. So yeah, then it was a career. I told you I went through aviation officer candidate school for, um, you know, LDO
Yeah.
initiation basically, and then off to the USS Simon Lake out of Kings Bay, Georgia, and had several officer positions running logistics and intermediate maintenance activities for the submarine service. And then from there, it was the Holland and QAO of the Holland Quality Assurance Officer. And then from there, it was subgroup or Submarine Squadron 4 out of Charleston, South Carolina, where I was a Quality Assurance Officer and local government inspector for the entire squadron. And then we shut it down, closed Squadron 4 and shut down the main base. Holland had already left. He went to Guam out of weapons station, and the Frank Cable, where the Squadron 4 was embarked on, it was getting ready to deploy as well, and to get out of there because base was shutting down, and we shut Submarine Squadron 4 down, and then I retired. And that's how that all worked out.
Wow. So when you retired, so now we're in the mid 90s. What was that like? You know, you're coming out of the Gulf War. Now they're looking at Somalia, Bosnia, Herzegovina, those areas. What was the feeling like retiring at that time?
It was okay, only because I was probably 45 at the time, and knew that if I stayed in, I was going to stay in for 30. You know, it was obvious that had to be one choice that you had to make. And at the time, I thought, well, at 45, I could start another career.
Yeah.
So I decided that that's kind of the way I was going to look at it. And I had young kids. I had 2 young kids that, you know, I thought get them in school and get them stabilized, you know, and all that stuff. So I needed to make that move. And to be honest with you, a nuclear trained guy, what opportunities do you have out there? Well, you can go to a nuclear power plant and
Sure.
work on a nuclear power plant, and it's good money, but it's a 24/7, 365-day a year job.
Yeah.
You know, you babysit that thing and all those regulations and all that. So there was a lot of stress for those guys and everything,
Sure.
even though they make the money. So I said, let's try something else. Well, at the time, you could go drive a truck, you know, go to
Sure.
learn
Get
to
your
get a commercial,
CDL.
yeah,
Sure.
and drive a truck. So that was something that a lot of guys were doing. Or you could go into education, or you can go into law enforcement. So those were kind of the 3 options there besides the nuclear
Right.
power plant. I checked out. I actually rode several, you know, did some patrol car drives, you know, where the guy would take you on his drive, you know, for the police department. And I thought that was pretty cool and liked it. I applied for the South Carolina Highway Patrol, and you know, that went by the wayside because I'd never heard from them. And then I started going into looking at education, and I realized I could teach junior ROTC, Navy junior ROTC, and I said, well, that's something that's worthwhile.
So was this something that you were looking at as you were transitioning
Before
to
I
retirement?
transit, you have to. Before you transition, actually, before you retire, you've got to go get screened for that.
Yeah.
And get accepted for
That's
that.
what I thought. I know the Marine Corps
Yeah.
does the same thing.
And so that was in the works at the same time that I'd sent that application off to South Carolina Highway Patrol.
Sure.
Okay. So I got several requests back from letters that I'd sent out to the schools to try to get those positions, and said, come interview for this one. There was one in Michigan. They wanted me to come up to interview, and it was in the middle of winter. So I drove over there.
Winters in Michigan.
And I'm like, okay, this is pretty tough. It's scary, you know. But they wanted somebody that was going to give them a bunch of trophies, like, you know, rifle team trophies and drill team trophies and all that stuff, you know. And I was saying, that's fine, but that's not what we're really about. It's about leadership and all this other stuff, you know. So I obviously didn't shine to them to get that position, and I wasn't worried about it. And then Great Oaks out of Sharonville here in Cincinnati, they contacted me, and I went and interviewed for them, and they offered me the position. But at the same time that I got that offer, I get the letter back from South Carolina Highway Patrol, and they said, "Come to the Highway Patrol Academy that was out of Columbus, South Carolina, Columbia, South
Yeah,
Carolina."
yeah.
And I said, "Huh." So I looked at what they were offering, and I looked at what Great Oaks was offering. Now you could take the 17,000 a year job as a highway patrolman. They give you your entire uniforms, and your weapon, and then
Sure.
they give you a car. So
Yeah.
that was like an incentive because you could drive the car all around, even though you realize that it's a marked car, you're still going to be on
Yeah,
duty,
yeah.
right? Anyway, and you obviously know that there's a risk there. And so the other thing I found out was that they move those guys around from post to post every 5 years. They don't get to
Ah,
stay at a post for their entire tour. So looking at that, I'm going, that's like being in the Navy.
so you're like all over the state of South Carolina.
And
Well,
moving your family, and what I talked about, stabilizing the kids and all that
yeah,
stuff.
right,
So then
right.
I looked at the fact that they were offering me 4 times that amount of money to work as a junior ROTC instructor at Great Oaks.
It seems like a non-starter.
Right. So I
Yeah.
went and took that job, and obviously that's how you and I met.
Yeah, and so for everybody out there, so this gentleman here is probably a mentor to a lot of people who've worn the cloth of our nation through the junior ROTC program here in Cincinnati. And so um it there's a lot of impact that I think you have on all of us, and I'm sure I hope that there's a lot of folks that will watch this from that, and they probably I leave a comment, leave a like, but tell us about the impact that you have left on a community of young people over the years. I know from my perspective, the impact is incredible. But I think hearing it from your perspective of how did that help you not only transition out of the Navy, but how did that help you um with anything that maybe have happened while you were in the Navy? Like we you know on this show especially, we kind of talk about post-traumatic stress, things like that, things that may have happened in your career. um did Was there anything in specific that the junior ROTC instructor position may have helped you with?
Well, I certainly was a better transition than just dropping everything and forgetting what where you came from and
Right.
going doing something else. So I was able to continue on with the camaraderie, the feeling of being belonging to something and something to be loyal to. Um, I used to say to other people that it's hard to be loyal to McDonald's if you have a job at McDonald's. Now, certainly it's a job, and I'm not getting down on McDonald's, but to have loyalty, to have something like a commitment and feel that, the country is worthwhile, compared
Sure.
to that. So,
Right.
so that was tough, and being an ROTC helps you through that because you don't have to give all of it up. You can wear the uniform, you're retired, but you wear the uniform. You still do um, all the stuff that you're supposed to be doing at the same time. It's a military-like position.
Right.
So it helped through that aspect of it. As far as when you were talking about young people, um, it was an honor. I mean, just as much as you can feel that from your side what it was an honor for me to do that. Um, the students that came through came from all different walks of life, as you know. Great Oaks is a career technical school, so 10 feeder schools feed into Scarlet Oaks where we had our unit.
Right.
And they come from rich schools to very inner city schools.
Right.
So you have the whole bit, and putting those students together and then working with them so they can become a team, and work as a team. and be committed to something, like we said, and be learning leadership, respect, courtesy, a whole bit. I mean, I've had several of them, and I'm sure you can remember this. When we got into the speaking about general courtesies to students, we said there's nothing wrong with holding a door open for the opposite sex. There's nothing wrong with pulling a chair out. These are common courtesies that you
Sure.
do, and it doesn't have to be necessarily to the opposite gender. It can be anybody.
Right.
And they would go, well, that makes you weak.
No.
I'm going, what do you mean that makes you weak? Nobody's going to look down at you because you did that. They're actually going to look up to you because you do that.
How do you be a selfless servant? And I think that was the capture on that was, even if it's holding a door for anybody or pulling a chair out, that's being a selfless servant. And I think that it kind of brings my faith in on that is something that Jesus taught us, was to
Exactly.
he washed others' feet. He didn't have to do that, but it was something that he didn't want to be served. He wanted to serve others.
Yeah, exactly. And that was something that all those different walks of life that came into the school, from all those different schools that we had, you're going to reach somebody through that, and it's
Right.
going to help somebody in their later life, And so I think we uplifted a lot of students along the way.
Yeah.
And it was very impactful. You were one of the students that I held a lot of honor for, because you took those leadership positions and you did those things. And there were several of the different classes, because it's only a 2-year school, so you can imagine the turnover that we
Absolutely.
had. That a lot of them did this, and I can think of names along the way. Made that unit a unit that was cohesive, and we were one of the top 10 units in the nation at the time you were there. So
Yeah, and I've got a book that has outstanding unit awards and that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's amazing the impact that you and the other instructors that I had while I was there, Master Chief Andrews and Master Guns Brady, you all had a profound impact on those around you.
yeah, I think when they created the ROTC programs throughout the junior ROTC programs throughout the nation, they looked at that and knew that that was going to be very impactful, and so they had all branches do it, and became Title 10 of the U.S. Code of
So especially in my latter career in the Marine Corps, I was the ops chief for a detachment in Texas, and it was a schoolhouse, and a lot of the Marines that were coming through there were quite a few that were either Eagle Scouts or had gone through a 4-year ROTC program. We had some that were like the explorers or Future Leaders of America, FFA.
Yep. Future Farmers of America.
Yeah.
They don't call it that anymore, just plain FFA, but you're right. You're
but a lot of you say walks of life, and it is, and I think especially for a school like Scarlet Oaks, it's a microcosm of the U.S., right? So there's 10 feeder schools, but now put it in the grander scale of the U.S. When these guys go to recruit training, they especially for guys that are going through an ROTC program, they already have that at a micro level, and now they're seeing it at a macro level. So
that was one of the incentives too, is that a student that was an ROTC student could get a increase in their rank when they entered the service.
Yeah.
From an E1 to an E2. So that was at least something there, an incentive for that. But we weren't really a recruiting program, as I probably mentioned to you before. More about leadership, courtesy, respect, Um, one of the things that happened during my time, 5 years of teaching ROTC, was I had the students in the classroom during that period, and then we have these big screen TVs. Remember the big screen TVs we
Yeah.
had? And they were on a channel, and the next thing you know, they broke into the channel and they started talking about, oh my gosh, these planes flew into the Twin Towers. And
Yeah.
Master Guns Brady and I walked in there, and we were going to turn the TVs off because we didn't want the students necessarily to see something like this. But they were
Sure.
all like, it's part of history. We need to see it, So we left them on, and both of us had chilling spines, chills going down our back and everything. And
You're preparing the next
well, that
generation of combat vets.
That came as a thought. But the other thing is we walk back into our office because our office is, remember, right outside.
Right.
And he gets on the phone and he starts calling. I go, who are you calling? He goes, I'm calling the recruiter. I go, what do you mean? He goes, I want to go back in. And I go, well, doggone it, I think I'll try that too. Well, even though we were indefinite,
Yeah.
they could call us back. They didn't want either of us. But that shows you how impactful.
Yeah. Oh, wow. 100%. 100%.
And that had to be big on those students, at the time. And
well, and it's funny you bring it up. I had just showed up to my first duty station from schoolhouse, and so I'm at Camp Lejeune in the barracks. We had just done uniform inspection, and first sergeant sent us away, go get changed, and get to work. And so I'm in my room, and the center block wall dividing all the rooms, my neighbor who was in my platoon with me pounded on the wall, Griff, turn on the news. And as I turned the TV on, the second plane hit, and it was like an instant, we're going to war.
Exactly.
So within an hour, because of the unit that I was with, we were at MEF headquarters getting briefed, and we were told, you guys need to start finding information. And so we were sent back, and that's when things started kind of kicking off for us within the first 24 hours.
Yeah, that was very impactful. The other thing that was impactful was we were talking about, their transition over into the civilian life from the military, and ROTC helped kind of smooth that over. I was recruiting when I was in recruiting duty out of the Alfred P. Murray building, Northwest Smith Street,
Yeah.
in Oklahoma City,
wow.
Oklahoma. So it was after I got commissioned and after I left there that, you lose track of your past duty station and the people that you knew there, as time, it goes on. And the domestic terrorist issue where they blew the building up happened after, luckily for me, after I had left there. I happened to be sitting on the couch, and this came on TV, and I'm going, oh my gosh, that's the same building I recruited out of. And I used to get my recruiting car out of the bottom of that because they had in the basement.
And the hole that truck left was just immense.
There was a lot of bodies. A lot of people lost their lives in that. And I never really considered looking at that, at the time. And then later, as I started looking back, and it brings tears to my eyes. So excuse me if I'm kind of slow.
No, it's all good.
Senior Chief Reyes, Tony Reyes, United States Navy, submarine service. He was our yeoman when I was on the Tecumseh, which was my submarine out of Scotland. When I get to recruiting duty, lo and behold, there's Tony Reyes. He's the personnelman now for the entire recruiting district there in Oklahoma City. So I'd lost track. Like I said, I left, saw the bombing, and then later started looking at the names of people that had lost their lives in that. And Tony Reyes lost his life in that. He had retired and became a GS 11, 12, whatever worker for Housing and Human Services there.
Wow.
And he had to be on like the 7th floor, and he was killed in that. Now, his son was on the 3rd floor and survived. So it was like a tale of two things there. If you go to Oklahoma City now, besides the memorials they have there and everything, there's a lot of Tony Reyes's name on streets and other things because he was so involved in the community. He was Spanish American, he was involved in a lot of of things, for helping people out. And that was
and that's
anyway,
impact.
That's
and
where
that's
they
impact.
memory. Yeah.
So I come to the ask of, what kind of words of encouragement would you have for anybody retire? Because there are some folks that I know that watch the show, they're still active duty. What kind of words of wisdom would you have for them if they had questions about being a junior ROTC instructor?
Well, I would definitely encourage that. If they have the opportunity to do that, it's one of those things that you got to kind of prepare yourself before you actually retire, because you have to go through interviews and everything to make sure that you're going to get selected to go do that. But it does have a lot of benefits in the fact that you're going to touch somebody. You're going to help people,
right?
In a way that is, as you probably pointed out more than I did, that is more valuable than anything. And people just need a place that if they want to belong, they want to do something that's meaningful. A lot of people have jobs their whole lives, and it just seems like work. Go do something that you enjoy doing, so it's not like work, right? And this is something that if you're into it, they could do, and they're also going to get the benefit of helping all the students out. And I always say that regardless if you do that or not, when you get out, you don't lose those roots. You don't lose the people that you can still be in touch with. You still need to reach out and get in touch with them like you do, and help others get through any of the things that they might mentally have to go through. I was on submarines, and I had lots of risk and lots of things because it's a very unforgiving environment being underwater. So, people come back and they do have some things that linger on, afterwards.
Sure.
But the idea that you can make it through it and you can help people out and always stay in contact and talk them through that is worth more than anything. So the ROTC students, that's something that I like to do. I'll be out somewhere. Actually, as the principal of Laurel Oaks, when I was the principal at Laurel Oaks, what they call the dean of instruction, but it's the principal. I'll still see students come by and stop and say, "Hey, aren't you?"
Yeah.
And I'll go, "Yeah."
I bet that's a great feeling too.
It is. It's kind of neat. So that's my advice there.
Well, and to kind of close out the show, because that is a good 30-inch step. And with the reason for the show is for those kinds of stories and being able to bring to light other options for guys. Since I retired, a little over 3 years ago, there have been 10 Marines that I've lost to suicide. And not some of them I knew through just work. Others I knew through actual personal interaction. But giving guys and gals another avenue to thrive. And I think the junior ROTC program for the retirees, I think, is an incredible step into the civilian world again. I was lucky, I think, as far as, stepping into a job that I'm in the line of work that I do, that I don't have any personnel, and I can just concentrate on that job, and it coincides with what I did while I was in the Marine Corps. So it helps me a lot, and being able to do this kind of stuff is also a nice addition to kind of help me with that transition, because as you've heard, Marines don't lose the title Marine for the rest of their life. So
once a Marine, always Marine.
So for me, being able to help other Marines, especially, but any veteran, if I can point somebody in the right direction and be like, hey, you can go talk to this person, you can go do these things, then at the end of the day, I think the impact, the influence is incredible. So I appreciate you coming on with us today. I appreciate you coming over and taking the time. We'll have to maybe make this a regular thing, maybe get you on here and find out some old sub stories.
There's so many stories out there, and I'm sure that everyone that retires has those stories. So they're great to get out there. I'm glad you're doing something like this so those people can tell their stories, you know. But you're right. It's like revisiting it, and good times and bad times, you know.
Yeah.
There's a lot
Good, bad, or
of
indifferent.
stuff. The span of time that you went through from 2000 to 2023, the span of time I went through from 1972 to 1995, a little bit different, but we overlap. Some of the ideas, anyway, overlap.
Sure.
And my time in went from Zumwalt to Trost, Admiral Trost, you know, to well, my CO of the Simon Lake. I'm sorry, CO of the Holland was Admiral Frank Bowman.
Oh, wow.
So Admiral Frank Bowman was Chief of Naval Personnel, and then he was Naval Reactors.
Wow.
So it just shows you know the breadth of experiences and who you see and who you meet and what you do. You know,
That's
it's
incredible.
cool.
Well, I appreciate you coming on today. Until next time, this is a 30-inch depth.